Sorry about that. I had to take a little bit of a short break, but anyways, um, I guess to continue on what we were talking about, um, I noticed that the anxiety, like I said, had kind of decreased, and of course, I'd never put two and two together as to why it did. So, anyways, I began to get a little bit of my confidence back, and started kind of maybe dating a little bit, and kind of hanging out with some friends, and whatnot. And like I said, you know, I hadn't done really too much. Um, I just tried to start to rebuild my life, because I kind of thought maybe my worst days were behind me, and at least this was maybe over a 2 month period. I mean, I still had occurrences and things, but I never had anything too insane happen over that little bit of time. And well, like I said, moving forward with my life, I'd gotten a new girlfriend. I had a buddy that had moved into the house with me, which was kind of nice. Just kind of have him around because he's the type of person that really doesn't beat around the bush much. So I don't know, he would kind of keep me in check sometimes with some things that I would be fearful of or whatever. And over the next couple of months, I started, to go to college full time, and I was kind of doing odd jobs and things, but then, like college was really my primary focus, and going through school, I kind of noticed that my anxiety was starting to come back worse, like way worse than ever, because I mean, I guess at that point, I didn't have as many distractions. I mean, a lot of the updates to the house were done. I had, I was dating somebody, which I'm still dating to this day. 5.5 years later. Um, I don't know. Things started kind of to take a turn for the worst again. Like I would go to school and like I couldn't even focus on my tests anymore because I would have these, there's so many people around all the time, and you know, in college I wanted to, I don't know, I was trying to find value in my life again, and college was my way to do so. And you know, academics I felt was an outlet to show my worth. So I would put in tons of hours studying, and doing well on tests was a big deal to me. But I had noticed, which I'm sure you've probably noticed yourself, like when you're trying to do something, it's like having an anxiety disorder and panic attacks and things. Being around folks is really tough. And like I said, I talk a lot about being a good actor. Well, every day I was like consistently acting. I mean, I was acting all the time. I mean, it was very difficult to pay attention in class, and it was very, very difficult to do my tests because, I mean, really, I mean, I was basically separating myself. I mean, 50% of me, my mind was fixated on making sure I didn't die, body checking, making sure I didn't go insane in front of everybody or make a fool out of myself. And then, which only left 50% to try to do as well as I could and remember all the stuff that I had studied and, just do well on tests. And, I mean, I still continued to do well, but of course, I was constantly wondering like how much better I could do if I could think 100%. And I found like that I would have like some jealousy from time to time with people that would do slightly better, or if the friends that I did, I made a lot of friends in school as I always do. Um, I would notice like it wouldn't take as much effort on their part, or at least perception. My perception, it didn't seem like they had to put in as much effort in order to do well in school. So I don't know, I would get angry and angry and angrier again. I found myself being very angry again. Always just felt like I was behind the gun all the time. Like I thinking to myself, I'm like, I could be a damn genius if I didn't have to deal with the anxiety. So it was like, in between classes, I would just go back to, my car, and I would throw on a tape or whatever, and I don't know. By tape I mean like Tony Robbins. I had kind of gravitated towards that on a friend's recommendation to listen to this guy. So I would listen to that. It was kind of like a small sanctuary while I was at school. I would go back and like these breaks in between classes were so needed because it would allow me to get myself back calmed down and get back to I guess the present moment, or I was trying to whatever, and I started thinking of all these things. Well, while listening to Tony Robbins and things like that, I was recognizing all the time like how passionate this guy was and how passionate he was about human behavior. And you know, I was in dire straits. I needed something. I needed something to alleviate, and I was, like I said, I seem to be getting worse and worse and worse, and as you can tell just the way I'm talking now, it's very difficult to relive this terrible time in my life, but I can remember, like, the biggest turning point for me was I was in this, like, leadership class or something along those lines, and this teacher was just, bare knuckle beat your ass down kind of teacher. Of course, I respect the shit out of him. I mean, the guy was very straightforward, and he wasn't going to give you a free ride for nothing. And um, we had to do like an oral presentation, PowerPoint, the whole nine. And of course, I had a hard time focusing a lot of the times. And when I would have these like speeches to give, I would 9 times out of 10, I would just kind of go off the cusp because sitting down for periods of time on a computer, trying to focus on work and not Googling symptoms was just really not something that I was into at that point. I mean, uh, it was just a distraction for me. Well, jumping forward to, my point is I actually went to class that night to give my presentation. And right in the middle of it, man, I started to have a fucking panic attack. It was horrible. I was in the middle of giving it, and all of a sudden my speech started doing all that kind of shit, and I started to freak out. Inside. Of course, I didn't really show it too much on the outside, but I sounded like a blubbering idiot. And well, needless to say, I didn't do very well on it. I mean, I think I got a C on it, and I think that was a gifted C. I went home that night, and I was so hard on myself that day, just so hard on myself. I'm, basically just telling myself all the most negative things I could possibly think of at the time. Like, you're a piece of shit. You're never gonna make it. You'll never graduate. Um, when I was thinking about, the girlfriend that I had now, we've been together for a little bit, and I'm like, how would I ever become a provider for this person? I mean, I was really getting irrational with my thoughts. My thoughts were getting worse and worse. And I remember I came home and I was just so devastated, because I felt like I tried real hard and it wasn't working. And like I said, I really made a mountain out of a molehill for this one in particular. And I remember, I came home and I was, kind of taking it out on her. Like I said, I was very angry. I mean, I did not like abusively angry, but I was just very, very, just bitter and mean. Just, mean about myself, just saying negative things about myself and asking her how she could possibly be with me. It was, was she crazy to stay with me? Like I mean, that's her choice. And of course, she'd stuck with me through all of this at this point. So, I mean, to ask her those questions was really unfair. And I remember just kind of going upstairs and just crying uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do. I like at that point, I was willing to swallow 300 pills. Like I remember loading the shotgun and like putting it next to myself and crying and being like, this is it, man, I'm done. Like, I'm fucking done with this shit. Like, I could not imagine, like I said, the irrational thoughts had gotten to the point where it's like I literally could not imagine living another day like this. I was crushed. I'd hit rock bottom. you know. So as I'm sitting there crying, and I'd loaded the shotgun, and I also had a bunch of pills, and I was like, one way or the other, this is done. I'm over with it. I'm over it. I'm done. You know, I had I'd gotten to that point, and I just started to pray. That's all I knew. That's all I knew. That was like the last thing that I knew I could do. Of course, I'd been praying the whole time, but I mean, was basically at that point praying for forgiveness for what I was about to do, because I knew deep down that it was a selfish thing, and that I was worried about how people would view me. I was worried about how it would impact my family, and like my mom especially, very close to my mother. And yeah, I was just wailing, crying, and praying, and all this kind of stuff. And it was weirdly, I just had like this moment of clarity, like out of nowhere, just kind of just stopped, and I'm like, no. I'm like, it's not gonna beat me. You know what I mean? It's not gonna take me, not today. And I was just like, you know what? Either this thing's gonna kill me, or I'm gonna get better. I don't give a shit what all these doctors have told me, that there's no cure, that there's no way to get out of this fucking hell besides, over medicating yourself and basically being like an invalid. And I thought about Tony Robbins, and I thought about what he did, and like he had a bout with depression. He had a time in his life where he had he was really down. He didn't know what to do. I remember thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna learn this shit. You know what I mean? I'm gonna learn this. Like, there's got to be a way. There's something somebody's missing, and I'm a pretty fucking smart person. So you know what? I'm gonna figure it out. So from that moment forward, I bought every book that would even somewhat pertain to anxiety and panic disorder or self-development. And I mean, I've probably read 300 books. I mean, at least. And I remember the psychology department, they always had all these they had bins and bins and bins of books that were free. Like they were either old editions or just books they no longer wanted or thought were necessary to keep in the repertoire, whatever. So they were always free. So I mean, I was going over there like every couple of days. I was picking up two more, three more. I was reading and reading and reading, and I'm looking up webinars and basically trying to learn anything that I could, and started kind of understanding certain aspects of it. Like I started, you know, figuring out, what biochemically was actually happening. Because I mean, the scariest part of anxiety and panic disorder is you don't know what's going on. And like I said, you're always looking for this external thing, like this horrible disease that's actually causing all of this, that you're hoping that some doctor somewhere has a cure for. And at that point, like I said, I started figuring out, biochemically what was going on, and then emotionally, and and I just kept reading, and I was journaling my ass off. Like, I mean, I was writing down, like, I had a tape recorder as well, like, everywhere I went, like, anytime I was thinking something strange or whatever, trying to find my triggers, trying to figure out, you know, what causes this. Like, if I found out, like, a specific symptom, like, I would go through and find out all the shit that I could possibly find out about that symptom, what it could possibly be. And I started like kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, where it's like how you breathe. Did a video on that, like the different foods that you put in your body, like how exercise, how stimulants affect you, how you know PTSD, even if it's not like I mean, people think of post-traumatic stress, they think of like seeing people get murdered or being overseas, um, being in the military and things like that, because predominantly that's what's in the media when it comes to any kind of post-traumatic stress. And like I said, I just started, like I said, journaling my ass off. Like no matter what it was that was going on that day, I journaled everything that I ate that day, how much of it, kind of supplements I was taking, who I talked to that day, who was the trigger, what did they say, what did I talk about? I mean, it seemed insane, but like I said, I was either gonna die or I was gonna figure out what the fuck was going on, and I was done. I was done. I was bound and damn determined. to figure out what was going on with myself. And there was no way I was going to let this thing beat me. So like I said, I continued to research every day. And then I was applying a lot of the things that I was learning to my day-to-day life. I started, using all these little tips and tricks and things that worked. I'd write it down. This worked here, and this didn't work here, and that worked. And yeah, I started to kind of see like this darkness that I'd been dealing with for so long, like starting to dissipate. You know what I mean? And like I said, I've talked in a lot of videos. It's like you're fighting an enemy that you try to go to the doctor and they don't know what it is, or they know what it is, anxiety, but they don't really know what the hell it is. So I mean, you're really fighting something that you can't defend yourself against, or so they think. That you can't fight it. It has no face. It doesn't have a legitimate name besides anxiety, which is a pretty blanket statement, in my opinion, or a blanket term, blanket name, whatever you want to call it. Well, like I said, once I started figuring out that there was triggers, and then there was diet, and there was, just maybe a chemical imbalance here or there, something along those lines, I started getting better. You know what I mean? I started, doing a little bit better well, a lot better in school. I mean, I was always an A/B student, but now I'm knocking down straight A's, and I'm dealing with things, and of course, sure, I still have the issues, but I was getting better, and that's all I wanted. I'm like, as long as I'm continuing to grow and I'm getting better, that's positive, and I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. So as I started to get better, I also, being the negative person or the negative thinker that I'd become because I'd practiced it forever, I started to feel a lot of grief about all the time that I had lost, the relationships that I lost, the jobs that I lost, and I was angry. Oh God, I was so pissed because there was nothing I could do. You can't, I don't have a fucking time machine, you know. So you can't go back. And I'm like, God, if I would have known now how things could have been different, right? So that's how this whole little power of self thing kind of came about, because I was grieving about that now. Now that was like a big focus of mine. I did all this research. I have 150 notebooks just full to the gills of shit that I learned. I got stacks and stacks of books, all these things that I learned, but I still couldn't get that 6.5, 7 years back. Well, and I'm racking my brain. I'm like, oh my God, how do I get this time back? And of course, it's impossible. But then it dawned on me. I'm like, you know what? This shit wasn't for nothing. You know what I mean? Going through all this wasn't for nothing for me. And yeah, I can't get that time back. But how do I make it even? Got a big thing with being even. You know what I mean? Like, things have to be even for myself in my life. And the only way I could think of to do that, to remedy this grief pattern that I had created for myself, was to help others. People that were me, that are me 6 years ago or 5 years ago, that were just starting on it and had no idea what was happening. They don't know what's going on. They're going to doctors. They're not getting answers. They don't understand how their thought processes and what they do on a day-to-day basis, the choices that they're making, how it's impacting them and how it's affecting their thinking, and how your thinking can affect your body, how it can create symptoms, how you basically can think yourself in or out of a hospital. I started thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, I can't get my 7 years back, but I sure shit can give people some of their time back. So if I come across somebody that is just starting out with this fucking demon of a disease, disorder, whatever you want to call it, illness, and if I can help them get better quicker and get over it and get their life back and get on with their life, that's kind of getting life back, right? I can't get my 6, 7 years back, but I can give somebody else their time back. And that's why I decided to do this. I know a lot of my videos are kind of all over the place because I got a million things going on in my mind. But these videos are so I can help other people not have as hard of a time as I did because I didn't have anybody to talk to. Nobody was willing to talk. Not that they were willing, but I had nobody that I knew that was going through this shit. There was no doctors that specialized in it. I remember how lonely I felt. Felt so damn alone all the time, like no one understood me. Because I'm like, well, you know, they'd never gone through it. Or even, you know, to that extent. They'd never gone through anxiety like that. So how the hell could they help me? You know, I was sick of people being like, I would do anything to take it away from you. I wish I could take it away from you. Well, you can't. The only person that can take it away is myself, my choices. Changing how I think. Changing what I do every day. You know, setting myself up to succeed and stop being so damn negative every day. You know, and sure, there's the biochemical aspect, but there's also things to counteract that. And that's why I started to develop that Getting to Know Your Enemy. I mean, it's a book that I've been kind of piecing together. Of course, it's, you know, in like 35 different chapters, and, you know, I can't make rhyme or reason of it, but there's a lot of valid fucking information in there. A lot of good stuff. Because, like I said, I spent all that time, all my free time was spent learning this disorder, learning everything I could about it. And that's why I say it's like a chess match. You know, it's like if you have a situation or an ailment or a symptom, there's a you know a counter move. You know what I mean? Whenever it makes a move, like I mean, you got to think about your mind. It's like your mind's gonna beat your ass every time. You want to know why? Because it knows your next move. You can't get ahead of your thought processes, and you can't get away from it because it knows you. It knows what you're gonna do. Okay, and of course it sounds strange that I'm talking about it like it's third person, like it's something separate from you, right? Well, here's the fun thing. Okay, this is the best piece of information that I could probably give you. The one that changed everything for me. Okay, listen to me when I tell you this. Your mind knows your move before you do, right? It's your own mind. You're fighting your own mind. And when you think of it as a separate entity, your anxiety knows your move before you do. Well, here's a fun fact. You're also part of that trio. You also know what it's going to do before it does it. Sounds like a tongue twister. Sounds like a riddle. Sounds like I'm talking in circles. But just as much as your anxiety knows your next move before you do, you know anxiety's next move before it does too. You're all one and the same. And then when we integrate all three, you start to work together as opposed to working against one another. I mean, you're consistently going against the grain. Try going with it. You know what I mean? Like, when your anxiety's happening, let it happen. I mean, the fear is what makes all the symptoms come on. Being terrified starts the fight or flight response, trains your amygdala to be on red alert all the time. Well, you got to reverse it somehow, right? I mean, you can't stay in that frame of mind forever. It's all about retraining, reconditioning. And that's exactly what I'm trying to give little tidbits of information on how to do that. Because, I mean, I see why people ask me these questions. Have you ever actually gone through this? Because I guess it's kind of difficult to see, you know, you look in the mirror every day and you're like basically debilitated. Maybe you're jobless at this point. Maybe you lost a relationship, friendships, lost a bit of yourself. You don't even know who you are anymore. You're basically living your anxiety nightmare every day. You know, you're living that. You lose yourself. Okay? But you can get it back by doing these things. You know, these things are all part of that Rubik's Cube that is anxiety and panic disorder. That's why I say you get to know your enemy. You're fighting something without a face, without an actual name, nothing tangible that you can fight back, and it's always attacking you, but you know its move too. You know its move. And that's why I do this. Because I'm trying to teach people. Like I said, I mean, I've worked with probably on a consistent basis long term, and when I say long term, I'm talking like a few months, probably 25 people. Out of those 25 people, I don't know of one of them that their life isn't better. Some of them completely cured 100% because it's buy-in. Not quite as analytical. They don't allow that negativity to get them down. Okay? And then there's, that percentage that was like me. Well, they still struggle with the what if, but you know what? They go on vacations now. They're going to the gym all the time now. They're living their life. Sure, they still deal with anxiety frequently, sometimes, maybe once a month, maybe once every 6 months. Bottom line is they're better off than they were before. My point is that's why I make these videos. That's why I do what I do. Because you know what? This is something that I actually found passion in, that I put my heart and soul in because it was my life. It was my life that was in jeopardy. My life as I knew it was frickin' over. But I took it back. I was like, fuck you, you're not taking away my life. No. And of course I was talking to myself and I just didn't even know it. So, ultimately, to answer your question, have I ever gone through this? You bet your ass I did. But furthermore, I did what I needed to do to get back to where I'm at now. Graduated with honors, got a good job, got a great girlfriend, nice house, lots of friends. I do what I want because I took back my life. And I think everyone is capable of doing that. Given the right tools and having somebody with the experience that has gone through it, I think that it will cut it into a fraction of the time that you're going to deal with this. Because it feels so much better knowing that somebody else had gone through it prior, that you're not crazy. You know what I mean? Like, they've gone through this. I mean, every anxiety issue, panic issue is case sensitive. Everyone has their own different fears. Everybody has their own different symptoms. Okay? So really, what it boils down to is, what are you willing to put in? Okay? Me, I put in multiple years to learn all this shit on my own because no one else could tell me. Well, now I know all this shit. Now I have the burden or responsibility of sharing that information. They call it burden for whatever reason. It's a quote, look it up. But I'm here to give you some of your life back so I don't feel so bad about losing part of mine. Well, I guess in short, that's my story. I hope that clears up your question on whether or not I've ever had anxiety and panic. The other question is, do I still deal with it? Yeah, I do. But I have all the tools, so it doesn't affect me. It's nothing more than, some barriers. Like when the police rope off an area for a festival, you got to take a different route. And I know what routes those are now. And like I said, that's why I'm in the position I am now. Like, you're curious as to why I'm so damn confident. How can you get in front of a computer and talk to tons of people and act confident if he has anxiety and panic? Well, I'll tell you what, 5 years ago I couldn't have done it. Couldn't even do it in front of a class of 20 people. But I can do it now because I know it serves a purpose. And like I said, I have such a passion for people now because I understand and have empathy. Whether your fear is spiders or death, I mean anything in between. I get it. I get it. The most irrational of thoughts. I get it. 8 years ago, I wouldn't have got it. I probably would have made fun of you. I admit that. I'm proud of it. But I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this. I felt like it was probably beneficial because, like I said, people tend to want to question. They don't know what your intentions are, if you have a motive. Well, like I said, I promise you that my motive is to help you get past this and get your life back in order. Because I want all of you to have a great life. The best life that you can have, you know what I mean? And I know how much anxiety and panic can take that away. It takes it right out from under you. And you can lose so much. I gained so much more, man. I have so many more friends and people in internet land that I talk to that have become really, really good friends. And I look forward to making more. Like I said, and I look forward to giving your life back or helping you get there. So, with that being said, again, thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for more videos. I'm going to continue doing what I do, and if it helps you, great, because that's what I'm here for. All right, have a great day.